Hello everybody. Today I can sketch polynomial functions by finding the zeros given the factors and understanding that the zeros hit the x-axis. The factors do not hit the x-axis, the zeros hit the x-axis. We're going to also talk about single roots and double roots, so let's just quickly talk about that. Single roots, double roots, which we've already kind of talked about in the last lesson. Single roots pass through the x-axis. Double roots bounce off the x-axis. So we're definitely going to be using that in this lesson. And let's get to it. On the grid below, sketch a cubic polynomial whose zeros are 1, 3, and -2. Well, the zeros hit the x-axis. Students get confused when they're supposed to switch the sign and when they're supposed to not switch the sign. The answer is the zeros hit the x-axis. If the zeros are 1, 3, and -2, then the graph hits the x-axis at 1, 3, and -2. There's no double roots here because it does not say anything about it hitting twice. So everything's going to pass through. It doesn't specify if it's opening up or down, so because of that, it doesn't matter. Just make sure you draw a curve that passes through each of them. Make sure you put your arrows, and you're good. Number 3. The zeros are -2, 1, 1, and 3. Again, the zeros hit the x-axis. Real zeros hit the x-axis. The zeros hit the x-axis. So -2 is a 0, so it hits at -2. 1 is a 0, so it hits at 1. 3 is a 0, so it hits at 3. Now, we check for double roots. There is a double root at 1. There's 2 1s. So I like to always circle my double root. So when I go to sketch it, again, it does not matter where I start because it does not specify if it's positive or negative. I'm going to pass through the -2. The next thing it has to hit is that 1, and it's going to not pass through but bounce off. The next thing it has to hit is that 3. It's going to pass through, and that's it. I'm going to do that one more time. It's got to pass through the -2. The 1, it's got to bounce off, so when it hits the 1, it bounces off and turns around. Next thing it has to hit is that 3, and that's how we sketch it. If you see a plus or minus, let's talk about this one quick. So the zeros hit the x-axis. The zeros are -5. When it says plus or -2, it just means +2 and -2. So -5, -2, 0, 2. -5 is a double root. So it's going to bounce off that one. It's going to pass through everything else. Number 5. The factors are x -3, x + 4, and x + 2. Factors don't hit the x-axis. Zeros do. Zeros hit the x-axis. So if they give me the factors, I need the zeros. So if x -3 is a factor, then +3 is a 0. If x + 4 is a factor, then -4 is a 0. If x + 2 is a factor, then -2 is a 0. So my zeros are -4, -2, +3. There's no double roots, so everything passes through. And that's it. The zeros hit the x-axis, factors don't. To go from factors to 0, I change the sign. X -3 becomes +3, x + 4 becomes -4, x + 2 becomes -2. Number 6, my factors are, well, the factors don't hit the x-axis, the zeros do. So if my factors are x + 5, then my 0 is -5, my 0 is -2, -2, and +4. From here, it's the same thing we did. -5, -2, +4. -2 is a double root, so it's going to bounce off that value. It passes through -5. It bounces off -2. It passes through +4. And that's it. And again, if it was upside down, that's fine. It doesn't specify. And this is generally how it's asked on the regions. One more little twist. If they give you a trinomial factor, factor the trinomial. Two sets of parentheses, x and x. First sign comes down. Positive and a positive is a positive. Multiplies to 16, adds to 8. That's 4 and 4. X plus 4 times x plus 4 is x plus 4 squared. So my zeros are 3, and since there's a square that x plus 4, so first of all, the corresponding 0 is -4, but it's a double root. So I have 3, I have -4, -4 is a double root, so it's going to bounce off the -4 and pass through the +3. So if you have a trinomial factor, factor it. It's going to usually be a binomial square, the same thing twice, which means you'll have a double root at that value. That's it. That's all I got for you. Practice this. It is an important topic, and it's related to a lot of the other lessons. I can sketch polynomial functions by finding the zeros given the factors. So again, what that means is if x minus 3 is a factor, you need to know that 3 is a 0. You're changing the sign. And knowing that the zeros are what hit the x-axis, not the factors. And again, understand single roots and double roots. And if they give you a trinomial factor, factor it. Practice. See ya.